Everybody, how's it going? Thank you all for coming. We really appreciate everybody being out here. We are streaming this live to Facebook as well, so we will be making sure to see if there's any activity out on the feed. I am Matt Royer. I am the co-chair of the Virginia Justice Dems. We have a great crowd here tonight. We are so excited that you all are supporting the Virginia Justice Dems and our mission in 2021. Just some Zoom norms at the beginning of this. We will have you all on mute, and you'll remain on mute so that we can hear our speakers. If you have any questions for our guests, please post them in the chat, and we will get to them within our allotted time as best we can. We know that we won't be able to get to all your questions, so we will make sure to follow up after. So for those who don't know already, we restructured our organization back in November after the election. So myself and Johanna Gusman are now the co-chairs of the Virginia Justice Dems. I just want to first start off by thanking Allie Simons, as well as the other great founders that have really built up this group and really built up the platform here for the Justice Democrats in the Commonwealth. And it is with that great foundation that we are able to sit here with you tonight. So I want to make sure, Johanna, did you want to say anything really quick before we kick off?
Hello, everyone. It's wonderful to be here with you. We're so excited. Progressives Unite, and I'm excited to be hearing from Jennifer Carroll Foy. I am going to be taking questions from Facebook Live so that people can join us who aren't maybe able to come onto Zoom. So, and I'll join them.
Thanks. Thank you, Johanna. Yeah, before we get to Jen and talking about the gubernatorial race, I want to just speak a little bit about what we're doing here. While I'm sure everyone has been exhaling deeply since January 20th, I know that all of us here on the progressive left are quite aware that our work is just beginning. We know what it's like to be in the majority, but still feel like we have to work just as hard as we were while in the minority, as we've experienced here in Virginia over the past couple of years. We have seen our bills remain undocketed up until this point, or even killed in committee. So that is why it is vitally important that we elect someone into the governor's mansion who holds our ideals. And that was why it was crucial that we decided that the Virginia Justice Dems weigh in on the Virginia governor's race. As it is our mission to elect progressives who put people before corporate interests. And we want to stress that this election should not come down to identity politics during the Democratic primary. This primary season is based on the constant struggle of the progressive movement against the status quo in the Virginia way. And we must not move backward and relive previous administrations, just as we should not continue to give power back or give power to those with deep ties to corporations that look to buy influence into the governor's mansion and in the state house. So that is why we decided to endorse former delegate Jennifer Carroll Foy, because we believe that her candidacy embodies the Virginia Justice Democrats' principles of social, racial, economic, and environmental justice. We considered all of the gubernatorial candidates equally as they were presented to us, and we ultimately decided on Jennifer as our champion because of all of the things that she has done for the Commonwealth of Virginia already, and what her plan is for when she takes the governor's mansion. She is championing the issues of the working class here in Virginia and has committed to not take contributions from corporate PACs and lobbyists working to undermine our progressive movement. Jennifer has pledged to refuse contributions from Dominion Energy and other public service corporations, as well as continuing to refuse money from some of the corporations that we know will be trying to undermine our progress here in Virginia. She has demonstrated her dedication to good governance with the release of a new progressive ethics and campaign finance reform package that we saw earlier this month. And it's that kind of bold leadership that we here at Virginia Justice Dems are looking for. So without further ado, I would like to invite Jennifer to talk a little bit about her candidacy and just kind of see how we can be of assistance here.
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Matt, and everyone who is here. It is an honor and privilege to be here with you all. And I can't tell you that it means the world to me to have the endorsement of Virginia Justice Dems. I have been a witness to the work that you all have done and how principled and powerful your organization is. And so I know that you didn't take the endorsement lightly, and I greatly appreciate it and know how much it means to this campaign and helping us win on June 8th of 2021. So for those of you who don't know me, I like to introduce myself through, a short little, story that I like to say is the power of no. And so I grew up in Petersburg, Virginia, and Petersburg is one of the poorest communities in the Commonwealth. It has one of the highest child poverty rates of unaccredited schools, and was named one of the most dangerous places to live per capita in all of Virginia. And that's where I'm from. But luckily, I was raised by my grandparents, and especially by my grandmother, Mary Lee, a Southern Christian woman who had me in church 3 days a week, who taught me the values that I hold true today, who said that if you have it, you have to give it. And so even though she didn't have much, she gave everything she had. I don't remember a time we didn't have someone from the church or the community living with us. And so I'll never forget, at a young age, my grandmother had a stroke and became a quadriplegic. And having to be walked down a hallway and sat, in a seat at my dining room table, and with my aunt, us trying to decide if we're going to pay for our mortgage that month or for the medications keeping my grandmother alive. So I knew in that moment that I wanted to do whatever I could to make sure no other little girl had to make those type of impossible decisions. And so I didn't know what that looked like, but I proclaimed it. And people would say, well, what do you know? Who do you know? What are you going to do? You're just a poor girl from Petersburg. How are you going to make a difference and make a change? But let me tell you something about the power of no. That if a poor girl from Petersburg can go on to be the next legislator who expands Medicaid to over 500,000 Virginians, then absolutely anything is possible. And then again, when I was in my JRTC classroom in high school at Petersburg, and we were watching the Supreme Court decision on TV. And it was at that time that I realized that there were schools that women couldn't go to simply because we were female. And the men in that class said things like, well, women shouldn't go to a military college because our brains are smaller. We are born inferior, and we have a place in society and we need to stay in it. But I heard the words of Supreme Court Justice Ginsburg, and I listened to her and her voice when she said that women can do all things if given the opportunity. So I turned around and I looked at those men in my class and I said, you know what? I'm going to go to VMI because I'm just as smart and powerful and capable as any man in that classroom. And it was at that time that my best friend, he was going to go to West Point. And he walked up to me and he said, you know what? I was going to go to West Point, but I'm going to go with you when you go to VMI because I want to be there to watch you when you fail. Because don't forget, even though we're friends, I'm still female, and therefore to him and many other men inferior. So I looked at him and said, challenge accepted. So he went to VMI, so did I, and another male in our class. And when they got their head shaved bald, so did I. When they put on a man's uniform, I put on a man's uniform. And for years, I marched, sweat, and bled beside over 1,000 male cadets, and they all knew my name. But I'm here to tell you that out of the other 2 men who went with me to VMI, that I am the only one of us to walk across that Virginia Military Institute stage. Again, the power of being told no. And lastly, in 2017, when I decided to run for the House of Delegates, I announced the last week of January 2017, my husband and I became pregnant, of course, on Valentine's Day. And I told a friend of mine And her first response wasn't congratulations. It was, when are you dropping out of the race? And I said, well, why do I have to drop out? And she says, well, how are you going to be a new mom, a public defender, a wife, and a candidate running for office, flipping a seat from red to blue? You've already been outraised 4-1, and your opponent have every major legislator's endorsement in your area. It just can't be done. So I knew in that moment I wouldn't tell anyone else. And I knew I would be outraised, but I would never be outworked. So I did what needed to be done. With morning sickness and swollen ankles, I knocked thousands of doors, sent postcards, made phone calls, and at the end of the day, won that election while on bed rest, upside down, about to give birth. And then I went on to win by over 20 points in the 2nd district. And I say that to say this, because now is our time. People are still going to tell us no. No, we cannot end corporate corruption here in Virginia. It is the Virginia way. No, we cannot end the Mountain Valley Pipeline. No, we cannot make real substantive campaign finance reform. No, we cannot move towards universal health care. No, we cannot address real inequities in our healthcare, education, in our economy, in our environment. It just can't be done. One person can't do it. And so what I like to say is everything is impossible until it's done. And I know that in partnership, we will make a movement and mountains move out of our way, because we are committed and we are on the right side. And sometimes when you're standing in right, you stand alone. But luckily, I am standing with the Virginia Justice Dems. And I am excited to say that I have taken a pledge early on to never accept money from monopolized utilities. And that's why I've gone toe-to-toe cleaning up toxic coal ash throughout all of Virginia, where they have poisoned the people in the 2nd district, seeping lead, arsenic, and mercury into people's well water. I have fought and helped to pass RGGI and Solar Freedom and chief co-patron the Virginia Clean Economy Act, where it doesn't go far enough, but I fought to get PLAs, project labor agreements, on offshore wind and helped to protect cost-sensitive communities. And I can say unequivocally and full-throated that I have endorsed and supported the Virginia Green New Deal and the moratorium on fossil fuels, so we can finally end our addiction to fossil fuels here in Virginia. But we can't stop there. I will have the most robust campaign finance reform policy in Virginia's history, banning, total ban on corporate contributions, because the money, the millions of dollars that corporation gives, drowns out the voices of millions of Virginians. And people shouldn't win elections because they are wealthy. They should win elections because they have the best ideas and the most to offer for Virginia families. So we can have it all. We can have criminal justice reform. We can repeal right to work. We can fight and work towards universal health care. And we are just getting started. And so I'm excited about this campaign. And when people talk to me about opponents and this person has this and this person has this amount of money, my response is that organized people will beat organized money every day. And there are a number of campaigns out there that proves that to be true. Because when we move together, we again move mountains. And we have gone from the margins to the margins of victory, because we are fighting for Virginia families in a way that's never been done. So I'm excited to stand with you. We are here to shake up the status quo, to end politics as usual, to build a better Virginia where everyone has an opportunity to not just survive, but to thrive. So I look forward to answering your questions. And again, thank you so much for your endorsement.
Of course. Thank you so much, Jen. As always, it is such a delight to hear you speak on all those issues and just tell your story of how you've come to be where you are at right now. So we have been fielding some questions from the chat, and I'm just going to go down as I have received them. So first off, as governor, will you work to professionalize or modernize the working of the Virginia state legislature and government so that it can be better to serve all Virginians rather than political and corporate elite class?
Absolutely. And so, the thing about me is that I have been able to pass as many bills when I was in the minority as I was in the majority. And because getting things done in Richmond oftentimes is about two things: respect and relationships. And I have both. And so when you have that, people trust that you're doing things for the right reasons, that they can trust your word. And also, being one of the first women to graduate from Virginia Military Institute doesn't hurt either. Because when you say that, people know the stock that you come from and they know what you're about and what you represent. When I say that I'm from Petersburg, then people know that you don't, just make it out of Petersburg, you survive. And so I know what it's like to not have health care. I have worked minimum wage jobs and I felt the pain of being hungry and questioning where my next meal is going to come from. So that's why I've moved with this sense of urgency. And so I'm willing to work with anyone and everyone in a bipartisan fashion where we can. But if not, then I do make promises. And so one of the promises I've made, especially around the Equal Rights Amendment, when I had a tour bus traveling around the Commonwealth, educating and exciting people about women's equality and ending sex discrimination, and passing my resolution to make Virginia the 30th and final state needed to enshrine women's equality into the Constitution. My promise was this: we can disagree about a lot of things, but women's equality is not one of them. And if I can't change your mind, Democrat, Republican, or independent, then I promise you this: I will change your seat. And those are the type of promises that I make and I keep if people aren't really fighting for Virginians and working families and women everywhere.
That's great to hear as well. Let's see. I got another one. It said in 2020, Virginia passed a number of needed laws in an attempt to reduce gun violence and deaths. So far this year, we're on track to add a few more, a few of which will strengthen the ones we passed in 2020. Yet there are a few bad ones being introduced too. First, are you opposed to the two laws proposed that would allow for hunting on Sundays and with AR-15s? And second, the substantial risk protection order law was passed. To be fully effective, it requires a public awareness campaign. If elected, what priority would you put on leading one?
Okay, so the first one, as far as the using I think it was an AR-15.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, AR-15 for hunting. And so my position is that I believe that all assault weapons in Virginia should not be continue to be sold. So I believe that there should be a ban on assault weapons. And I don't believe that you need that type of weapon in order to hunt, right? I mean, at the end of the day, if you're that bad at shooting, right? If the idea, I understand that people use it for recreation. And I do understand that people have concerns about, the Second Amendment and protecting people's constitutional rights. But I believe that we can do both. We can keep our community safe while also allowing, people to own and purchase weapons. However, I do not believe in weapons of mass destruction. I do not believe they have a place, whether it's hunting or on our street corners. And so that's my position. And it's one of the last things that we really need to get done as far as robust common sense gun safety here in Virginia. Because it's not only about ending mass shootings, like the ones we saw in Virginia Tech and Virginia Beach, but it's also about violence interruption programs so we can address everyday urban gun violence as well. And so that's something that, that's my position. And then the second part of that was
About this. So in 2020 we passed the substantial risk protection order, but to be fully effective, it requires a public awareness campaign. If elected, what priority would you put on leading one? So leading a public awareness campaign around that protection order.
Absolutely. And so we have to, I think as a Commonwealth, we should do much better at educating the public altogether. There's a lot of misinformation and disinformation that's out there about what Virginia has done and what we have not done, what Democrats we support and what we don't. And so it's not only about our substantial risk, otherwise known as the red flag law, to that we can arm people with the information to let them know that if a person you think is a danger to themselves or the community, that there is an avenue that people can take to have that person, separated away from their weapons for a temporary period until hopefully whatever the emergency is resolved. And so I do believe in putting money to the side to promote and advertise and educate the general public about the multitude of common sense gun safety bills that we have out there. The people have to lock up their weapons away from their young children. The fact how universal background checks and 1 gun a month, how those policies make people safer and can prevent one of the main leading reasons of death relating to guns, which is suicide. And so that's what we need to do and we should do. And I fully support putting money and allocating money in the budget to get that done.
Excellent. So next is a question about healthcare. So they were asking about how your website does not mention Medicare for All, although that is obviously a federal program, so it would not fall under the purview of the governor's office. But I guess the question was, he talks about access to healthcare and not that healthcare is a human right. So as someone with a parent who suffered from a stroke, I think we should agree we need full healthcare and not just access. So could you talk a little bit about how you would be expanding access to healthcare and accessing to like a fully sort of almost universal healthcare coverage?
Yeah, so I believe in universal healthcare, and I know that that is the gold standard. That is where we have to end up. And I fully support the federal legislators in making that happen. So I do believe that Medicare for All is a fantastic goal for us to get to. And, I know we can do it. We just have to have the political will and the courage to get it done. There's many ideas on how we get there while keeping people with insurance. And so I am happy about, joining those national discussions. For me in Virginia, I'm running for governor. And so while I cannot independently bring Medicare for All here to the Commonwealth, my promise is to shore up the healthcare that we do have and make the Affordable Care Act and Medicaid expansion better than it ever was here in Virginia. So while I'm excited to have made that promise in 2017 to expand Medicaid, and now over 500,000 Virginians have access to quality, affordable health care, I will also, as governor, implement the reinsurance program, which is where the Commonwealth of Virginia buy down rates to make premiums more cost efficient or more affordable for families who otherwise cannot afford access to health care. So that's number one. That's been one of the things in other states has proven to drive down cost of premiums, is having the state actually buy down the premiums or buy down for high risk individuals that's in the pool. Something else I supported was the bill to put a cap on 30-day supply of insulin to $50. And I will build on that progress by having a prescription affordability board here in Virginia, similar to the one that they have in Maryland. And the sole function of that board will be to evaluate and take a look at the entire system of prescription pills and where the affordability issue is coming in, right? And so a lot of people, they want to point the fingers about why our prescription costs are so expensive. But this affordability board, their entire job would be able to find the disconnect and then negotiate to ensure that the prescriptions that we purchase more often are reduced and that there's a cap. So I think that will go a long way. I also support mobile health clinics. One of the biggest barriers for our mental health and people who suffer from substance abuse to have access to healthcare is transportation. When you're in rural Virginia and it takes you an hour to get to a local clinic or a hospital, that is a barrier. When you don't have access to the internet, so you can't have access to telehealth, that is a barrier. Even in your urban communities, a lot of people live on the fringes or live in tent communities. And so to have mobile clinics where they can access preventative care, get connected with treatment and services, and to be able to obtain their prescriptions. Arlington, for example, is a place that does it very well. I can say that that is something that I genuinely and wholeheartedly support. We just have to fund those programs. Also community service boards, so we can have more diversion programs, so people who are arrested for substance abuse and mental illness, they are not incarcerated, but actually taken to a clinic or a hospital so they can get treatment and services that they need. Because as we know, we cannot incarcerate ourselves out of addiction. So drug court, mental health dockets, veteran dockets, those are also the things that I've seen that help those specialized courts so people can get the wraparound services too. So as a public defender, I'm intimately aware of that because so many of my clients with mental health emergencies, they get arrested for trespass and disorderly conduct because they're responding to their internal voices and internal stimuli. Well, let's have an appropriate response. And so those are just some of the things as far as healthcare goes that I would support and I would get done as the next governor of Virginia. And of course, always fighting to protect women's access to reproductive health care.
That all sounds great to me. And of course, it's great to hear that you are supportive of that end goal of universal healthcare coverage. So that's always a plus to have there. This comes more on the campaign side. What will you and your campaign do to reach out to Spanish-speaking voters and other voters for whom English may be a barrier?
Absolutely. So one of the things I learned from my legislative races, because I have a huge English as a second language learner population here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. I mean, in specifically in the second district. One of the things that I would do is ensure that all of our materials are in multiple different languages. And when we are out talking to people in the community, once it's safe, we will have, translators who are from the communities that we're reaching out to. And I think that's imperative and really important. And so being able to overcome that communication barrier and then building trust, and people appreciate that you think about them. And the way that we will win this race is by reaching out to communities who otherwise have gone ignored and turning them out. So that's in the AAPI community, that's in the Latinx community, that's in the African American community, that's millennials, and so many other people who just feel like their voices don't matter and haven't been heard for so long. And so ensuring that we support voter registration for our communities and then ensuring that we get them out to vote, that's exactly how we're going to do it.
Excellent. Here, this is an education question. How will you support educators as governor, and what will you do to make sure school districts are enforcing that support?
Oh, one of my favorite questions about education. So as a former substitute teacher who quickly realized that is not my strength, and my hat's off to anyone who can be in a classroom with young people for that many hours. Some of the things and most ambitious things I support is collective bargaining for state employees. Until teachers have a voice, until they can strike and do all the other things that's necessary to ensure that they have a seat at the table, that their instruction time is being protected, that they have a voice in their benefits, then they will continue to not receive the benefits that they need. You saw it in West Virginia and Kentucky and a number of other states. And so like I tell teachers, I will be right there on the picket line with you because I believe in unionized support, and I believe in collective bargaining, and I believe in teachers. And so I am fully aware that we do not pay our teachers what they should be getting paid. To this day, they are still paid $7,000 less than the national average. And that's after I've supported multiple pay increases for teachers, and I will continue to do so. And one of the second most pivotal thing that I will do as governor is ensure that we modernize our standards of quality, which is the funding formula that the Commonwealth used to determine how much money the state will provide for education and lessen the amount of money that localities have to put up. Because there are communities like Pulaski and Petersburg and Portsmouth who don't have the type of coffers that Arlington, Loudoun, and Alexandria may have to put towards education. And, the difference is apparent. And so making sure that the Commonwealth comes in and do our real job and fulfill our constitutional obligation to ensure that every child has access to a world-class education, but we do that starting with teachers and paying them what they deserve, is one of my top priorities.
Excellent. You talked a little bit about collective bargaining, so I want to kind of follow up with another question about that someone had asked. That said, will you support collective bargaining rights for state employees? This comes from a UVA hospital employee. So obviously that is a little bit different because we don't have many unions for our hospitals here in Virginia. So can you speak a little bit about that collective bargaining piece?
Yes, so I supported Delegate Elizabeth Guzman's bill for collective bargaining for state employees. And I do not believe that it should be an option. And so what was passed out of the General Assembly, unfortunately, because due to a lot of pushback, was a watered down local option of collective bargaining. And it shouldn't be an option to do the right thing. It shouldn't be an option to pay employees what they should be getting paid and provide them with the job protections and the benefits and health insurance that they deserve. And so I do fully support collective bargaining for state employees. I think people should be getting paid a family sustaining wage, which is something that's extremely important. For me, I believe that one of the reasons why my candidacy is so unique is that I do believe that we can have Virginia be the best place for business while also the best place to live, work, and raise a family on a family sustaining job with family sustaining wages. And so that has to be the goal. And unless you can say with, with a full throat that you support repealing right to work and that you support collective bargaining, then, you're lying if you say you really support workers and working families in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Yes, and of course, the Virginia Justice Dems are supporting the repeal of right to work, but as of this afternoon, still remains undocketed in the Virginia House of Delegates. So we're encouraging everybody, if you can, to please call Speaker Fillercorn to get that docketed so that we can actually have a vote on it for once. But moving on to our next question, what is your position on universal childcare, and what are some of your childcare proposals as well?
Yes, so thank you for that question. Childcare has been one of the most challenging issues to address. Some of the relief that we see, or some of the benefits that we do get, is on the federal level with like our child tax credit. And so the question is, what can we do? I do as governor, what can we do on a state level? So I do support, and as governor, I will implement a working families refundable earned income tax credit. And so what that will do is shore up some money for working families to be able to pay for childcare. Something else that I will do is provide more subsidies and continue to build on a lot of the programs that Pam Northam is doing right now to help with early access to childhood education and to childcare. And so actually pay more towards childcare subsidies, and the federal government gives money, and Commonwealth of Virginia, we can give more to ensure that childcare is as affordable as we possibly can get it, and to have more subsidies, vouchers, whatever needs to happen so more families have access to affordable childcare.
Of course, we know that is obviously something that's near and dear to your heart, with two young boys at home that you have to take care of while also juggling all these other things. So that's great, to hear that you are really pushing that forward while on the campaign trail. Can you please discuss what you have done as a delegate on the housing crisis and housing instability? Also, please discuss your plan to ensure housing as a human right if you were elected as governor.
Yes, so I'm really passionate about housing. My husband has been housing the homeless population in Prince William County for almost a decade. So we're intimately familiar with the programs that work and the things that don't work as well. And so housing is multifaceted. And so I'll just go through my agenda for housing. One of the biggest issues with housing right now is exclusionary zoning. And what exclusionary zoning does is it basically says that we'll keep certain communities as low density, meaning we'll have pretty much wealthy single family homes in a community. And that community, that affluent community, will oftentimes prevent or try to exclude multifamily units like townhomes or apartment buildings, because the assumption is only lower socioeconomic people will live there and they do not want them in their community. And so that is our modern day redlining. That is a serious contributor to segregated communities and segregated schools. And so ending or helping to reform our exclusionary zoning here in Virginia is one of my top priorities, because when we end exclusionary zoning or reform it, then what happens is that there's more cultural competence. It helps end, bigotry and discrimination and racism, because you are living and working and going to school with people who don't look like you, don't maybe not speak your language or worship the way you worship. And that's what we need in order to build a true, diverse, and inclusive Virginia. And so that will also, trickle down to our schools. And so in Virginia, we have still some of the most segregated schools in the nation. And the way that we really address that is through housing. And so we right now fund a lot of our schools through property taxes, which means that the affluent communities have affluent schools, while oftentimes our Black, Brown, English as a second language learners, and disabled children of lower socioeconomic status, they're all distilled to, poorer performing schools. And so to have more inclusivity, and we do that through our housing program, that is one of my top priorities. Also, with housing, I will put in $50 million towards our public housing trust fund, because there are a number of fantastic programs that come out of that to help people get their foot in the door. I'll fund programs like rapid rehousing, where if a person has a job but can't afford to live in the community where they work, well, that program comes in, pays the first month's rent and the down payment, and pay a prorated amount of their rent for a number of months to help get people housed. That's the goal. And then some programs also pay a subsidized amount so people can live in those communities. Because when people can live where they work, you also are addressing transportation. Because right now people are living and working in Loudoun and Arlington, but they're working there, but can't afford to live there. So now they're commuting from Stafford and Fredericksburg. And so there's a reason that this section of 95 has some of the most congested traffic in the nation. And so all of these things are interrelated. There's an intersectionality there where we can address so many of our issues, but a lot of it starts through housing. One of the things as a delegate that I fought for was an eviction moratorium until 2022. Unfortunately, it did not pass. We weren't able to get it done. But what we were able to do was to pass policies to equal the playing field a little bit more for tenants and not so much for landlords. And so landlords, before they can evict someone, they have to give a person 14-day notice that they're about to be evicted. Not only that, but they have to apply for the rent relief program before they can evict someone, and have to wait to hear a response within a certain amount of time, or the person has to be denied or whatever may have you before they can move forward with the proceeding. So those are some of the things, and also offer a proration payback. So a person may not be able to pay $5,000 and back rent in 1 month, but maybe over a number of months they can. And so offering those type of programs to help tenants as much as possible, that's what we were able to get done. Also, a moratorium on utility shut off. Now, the things that we can do even better is that I wrote a letter to the administration on behalf of CASA in Action and other activist groups, saying we need to also expand our thinking in how we offer relief. Many people have subleases, especially in the Latinx community, or there's multi-generational, homes, right? And so how are we dealing with that? And so being more creative in how we offer relief to people is something that I would also do as governor.
Yeah, and we have seen obviously an eviction crisis happen during this pandemic, and with the temperature dropping right now, we know that there's a lot of people who remain unhoused. So that's a vitally important thing that we're talking about. This kind of goes into something I know that someone had mentioned in the chat. So HB 1937, which is the Green New Deal Act, that also still remains undocketed, and we know that is something that you have championed in the past, which we thank you for. But this asks, should the states take the lead on the Green New Deal instead of the federal government?
So the Virginia Green New Deal, it's pretty much, it pulls from the same, ideological pieces or priorities from the federal Green New Deal. It's all about moving towards 100% zero carbon emission standard. It's about protecting cost-sensitive communities. It's about putting people who have been negatively affected by our environmental practices to work and ensure that they have jobs and are able to benefit from the changes that's being made. And so the Virginia Green New Deal does that. It not only is policy positions, but it's also proposals. There are actually bills. And so one of the most noteworthy bills, especially from this session, is the moratorium on fossil fuels. So we can actually end our addiction to fossil fuels. We shouldn't keep having this conversation about new pipelines. And so this will help to end that. And that's really, really exciting. There are people who want to build, new pipelines already. But we are working towards ending the Mountain Valley pipeline the same way that we and so many of the wonderful advocates on this call fought, slept in trees, did the work, marched, protested, signed petitions in order to end the Atlantic Coast pipeline. And so that's what advocacy does. Advocacy turn to action, get things done, like ending a multi-billion-dollar pipeline. And so you can only do that when you're a principled leader who's always been right on these issues and who's willing to fight for what's right and stand up for Virginia values. And so, I say that because it's important. It's important to know that the Virginia Green New Deal, it's something that we can do, is something that we should do. I'm excited to have co-patroned the Virginia Green New Deal for many years, and it's something that I give my full-throated endorsement to going forward. And I will continue to fight for this, ending this existential crisis that's causing coastal flooding and warming temperatures in our community. I mean, our legacy should be, clean air to breathe and clean water to drink for our children. And it's my job and all of our duty to ensure that that happens. And we do that with the Virginia Green New Deal.
Thank you so much for that. And as Lee Williams, who is one of the co-chairs of the Green New Deal, mentioned in the chat, please call Speaker Fillercorn after this to leave her a message asking to docket that bill. We can't continue to put off the inevitable. The nature doesn't wait for when it's politically convenient, so we should not have to wait either to get this done. So thank you, of course, for pushing that while still running for governor. This goes off of some of the criminal justice reform stuff you had talked about earlier, more with the cannabis legalization. So is it worth it in terms of, the government's war on drugs to look into going beyond legalized cannabis like how they do in the state of Oregon?
That's a really great question. So I'm proud to say that I carried the legalization of marijuana bill for several years. And as governor, I will ensure that we also invest in the social equity programs, which is just as important. And so those social equity programs have to address the hurt and harm that so many Black and Brown communities have suffered due to the war on drugs and over policing, and to the disinvestment that we've made in those communities. So they look like more mental health services and more community service boards and day centers and community centers, all the things that communities need to thrive. And so as far as the, legalization of all drugs, I believe that there is going to be a study that's done on that. And there's many different theories on how to address it. One of the things that I know right now and am very adamant about is, for example, the pharmaceutical companies who's caused this addiction crisis and who's killed, hundreds of thousands of people. They don't need to just be sued. They need to go to jail, right? They need to be held criminally liable for the addiction and deaths that they've caused. And trying to figure out now, how do we wrap our arms around this in a way that makes sense? So I am, excited to hear and see what the study says. I do think that I know that we cannot incarcerate ourselves out of addiction. And so that's why I'm looking to heavily invest in diversion programs. So if a person is picked up for possession of, heroin or cocaine, it's not jail they go to, it's actually to, treatment. That's what helps. That's how we help them recover, get to the root cause of the issue. And so that's what I support at this moment: drug courts, diversion programs, first offender programs that'll help communities the most, and look forward to studying and getting more information on the defilization and the legalization of other drugs.
That sounds great. We have one final question here. So it says, I know you have introduced legislation to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, but however, given how long people have fought for it and the economic depression, making $15 an hour seem somewhat minuscule, given millions of people's circumstances, would you be in favor of setting the Virginia minimum wage to be tied with inflation? I would actually go a step further and ask, how would you feel about setting a prevailing wage set by some of our local unions here for whatever the work is that they're working on during that time.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I do support increasing minimum wage and tie it to inflation. And I want to say that that's what my bill did. I can't really recall, but if it didn't, I do support that. So we don't have to continue to have these fights and these conversations, and that it's something that is done. Unfortunately, we did pass a minimum wage bill. It was not what we wanted or what we needed. It goes up incrementally, and I believe we don't get to 15 possibly until like 2025, 2026, and that's only if basically the bill is reviewed again. And so we need a clean 15 bill and tie it to the index, and that's something I fully support, and I think we can get done. There's an appetite, especially now when people are seeing that, we call our frontline workers and people who are doing these jobs essential, but when they look at their paycheck, it says that they're expendable. And now is the time to make real movement and put our money where our mouth is. As far as the prevailing wage for contractors, yes, it's been brought to my attention. There are a number of things that we need to do. And so working with a lot of the unions, we have a plan, and the plan is to see if we can get the Davis-Bacon survey changed and increased. And if that cannot happen, then we will revisit the legislation here in Virginia. One of the reasons why I take pause is because, let me be clear, we do not have a totally union-friendly General Assembly. And that means for Republicans and Democrats alike. There were some Democrats who were trying to kill some of my union bills, ending wage theft and misclassification of workers, prevailing wage for contractors. So the danger that happens when you open up these bills is that, there could be people who are have malfeasant intentions, who want to make it worse, but there's some people who don't want it at all. And so I will do whatever's needed and possible in order to shore up our prevailing wage for contractors, while also making sure we protect the laws that we have, the books. Listen, it was not easy passing the most robust and substantive package of bills to help women and workers and unions in Virginia's history, but we did it, and we got it done because of some of the amazing activists and advocates on this call. But I'm forever vigilant, and I understand the reality of things. And until we have a, really friendly working family and union-friendly General Assembly, I have to do what's strategic and what makes sense. And so right now we're lobbying the federal government to change the Davis-Bacon rate to make it more just and more realistic for today's standards.
Yeah, that obviously, that is something that I have talked with you before, and we're pushing for equally on all fronts. So that everything you're saying here is just music to my ears. So we appreciate you getting on tonight and discussing a little bit further with your campaign after our endorsement came out. I just wanted to give you a minute or two to close out and say anything before we move on to some of the other parts of this program.
Absolutely. So again, I just want to tell you, thank you. Thank you all. I am honored and privileged to be blessed with your endorsement, and with Virginia Justice Dems and CASA in Action and Democracy for America and Sunrise Movement and IBW and Carpenters and ATU. I mean, together we are going to get this done, because organized people always beat organized money. And there will be people who want to silence us, who want to shut us down, because they know that we're here to agitate. We're going to shake up the status quo and change politics as usual. And many people have profited off the backs of so many vulnerable communities. And that ends today, and it definitely ends under a Jennifer Carroll Foy administration. So that's why we have to galvanize. We have to come together, and we're going to have to work. It's not going to be easy. But when is progress ever easy? And so by going to jennifercarrollfoy.com and signing up to volunteer, or emailing us at jennifercarrollfoy@gmail.com, so we can get to work, making the phone calls, sending the postcards, doing the lit drop, and whatever else needs to be done. And if you want to throw money at me, I will catch it, and I will use it, and I will appreciate it. And it will go to programs and things that we need to build a diverse coalition of voters all across Virginia, so we can win, because that's what this campaign is about. So I appreciate you and all of you, and I am ready to get to work. The election is on June 8th of 2021. However, However, the first ballots will be cast on April 24th. This is the first time in Virginia's history that we have early voting for a primary. So April 24th is the magic date. We have 45 glorious days of GOTV to look forward to. And so I am ready. My 3-year-olds are ready. We are primed to get this done. And so I look forward to being in lockstep and working in partnership with all of you. So let's go do it.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. And of course, we will be out there helping you. So thank you so much for coming. And it's always a pleasure to be able to speak to you.
Thank you all for having me.
Yeah, of course. Bye. All right, just real quick, we're going to go over some other things as well. We have a couple items that we wanted to discuss with everybody, just so because we've gotten some questions about this. So people have been asking us outside of the gubernatorial race, what will we be doing? So one of the things, obviously, is we are considering a endorsement in the lieutenant governor's race. We are still going through all of that. We're still figuring out who is our best fit. We're discussing that. If you have any insight into that you would like us to hear, we can always receive that via email, and we would love to hear people's thoughts. But outside of that, we've also gotten questions because obviously we are ramping up with the House of Delegates races this year as well. So we know that there will be some primaries happening and some open seats as well. So we want to make sure that we are being in support of those people any way we can. However, we only have so many hours in the day and we only have so many people on our team in leadership to do that. So we want to make sure that we are supporting folks in one way or the other. So that is why I will be, let me just share something with you all real quick, just so that if I can pull it up on my computer, that would be great. Just so that everyone is aware of what we will be doing. And this will apply to both the House of Delegates as well as the local races as well, because I know that some jurisdictions like Alexandria, for instance, are having their city council races. So here is what we are going to be doing with that. So we are introducing a 2021 Virginia Justice Dems candidate pledge. We want to make sure we are helping elect the most progressive folks that we can at every level of government here in Virginia. And of course, as I said, there are, obviously 100 delegate seats that are up, and there are multiple municipal elections this year as well. But we want to make sure that we're also holding people accountable when it comes to that. So the things that we are asking for are that people run a clean campaign. As Jen was just talking about in her campaign, that means swearing off donations from publicly regulated utilities, fossil fuel interests, corporate PACs, and lobbyists that are working as our platform. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. We're very similar to what the Justice Dems are doing at the federal level. The second is that they're committed to social justice. We're working to create the reforms in our democracy that lift up voting restrictions, and also introducing common sense gun safety legislation, protecting our marginalized communities against bigotry and discrimination, and protecting individuals' reproductive rights. We also want to make sure that they are committed to racial justice by fundamentally transforming our criminal justice system, legalizing cannabis, restoring voting rights to returning citizens, committing to actual fair and nonpartisan redistricting reform. By co-patroning the bill, that people are also committed to economic justice. By co-patroning the bill to repealing the so-called right to work law. So far, there seems to be only 2 candidates in this race, including Jennifer and the patron of the bill, Lee Carter, who have actually done that. That's something to take into account. raising the minimum wage to a livable wage, expanding Medicaid coverage, addressing the housing crisis, supporting paid family and medical leave, promoting free public college and trade schools, and expanding broadband access to all Virginians. And of course, and last but definitely not least, the environmental justice by championing the Virginia Green New Deal, committing to bring more clean energy to Virginia in the most equitable way, supporting a moratorium on all new fossil fuel projects, making investments in a mass transit, incentivizing environmental health, and reforming public utility regulation. So we know that we will be having a lot of folks who are getting into these races in the House of Delegates that are trying to make sure that we will be championing those people. So if you know anybody, or if you are anybody who is running for the House of Delegates, City Council, Board of Supervisors at the county level, school board, you name it, that is following these tenets, please send them our way. We will be rolling out this pledge on our website later this week. We are actually also, in that same sense, relaunching our entire website. We're relaunching everything having to do with Virginia Justice Dems. We're calling it, obviously, New Year, New Way. And I would actually add in there New Deal at the end, because we are supporting the Green New Deal here in Virginia. And we want to make sure that we are supporting working class issues up and down, no matter where we are. So this is what we're doing, committing to do this. So we will be making sure that we are raising those voices every step of the way. So it's not that we don't want to endorse people for those races. We absolutely want to. It's just it's simply we are all human. We don't have all of the time in the world. If we did, we could do this. This, of course, is a 100% volunteer organization, and we're doing the best that we can. So I'm so happy that we had so many people join us on this call. It really points to the amount of people that we have in this movement, and we want to be building a mass movement here in Virginia for progressives. I think it's super important that we make sure that we are building that wall to protect all of these ideals and protect the progress that we've already made and the progress that we're going to make, hopefully with Jennifer Carroll Foy as governor and all progressives up and down the ballot in 2021. So we look forward to helping you all out, and we look forward to having you join us along the way. We had some questions before about what membership will look like. We are also going to be rolling out something along with that as well. We are not totally finalized with that yet. We will be working on that, but we want to make sure that we are garnering all of that support with our Virginia progressive base here, and we're making sure that we're giving people a way to get involved, because obviously, like we said, over the next 4 years, we're still going to have a lot of work to do. Our biggest opponent right now is no longer Donald Trump. Our biggest opponent is going to be things like complacency and apathy, and people saying that well, Trump is out of the White House, we don't have to do anything else. We have all three executive. We have the executive branch, the legislative branch of the federal government, and then we have all three things here with the governor's mansion, the Senate, and the House in Virginia. But of course, that does not mean that things are going to get done. We have seen that happen all too well in 2020 and now 2021 here in Virginia. So we won't be able to rely on people saying things like, "Oh, we're in the minority, we can't do that." Well, obviously you're in the majority now, so you can do things like that. So we need to make sure that we are keeping our foot on the pedal, making sure that we are holding our legislators accountable. So from now until the end of session, I really encourage everybody to join some of our partners, like the Green New Deal, like the Coalition to Repeal Right to Work, Justice Forward Virginia, all these great legislatively focused groups that we are also helping promote. And then as soon as we get all that done, in before. We are walking. Well, I mean, we are going right into campaign mode from now until June 8th. So I'm really excited to have all of you here with us, and I want to make sure that we get all your questions, and we make sure that we are putting that out we answer those questions later on. Before we log out here, I want to kick it back to Johanna to see if she has anything that she wants to add, and then we'll go from there.
No, just thank you everyone for joining us tonight, and we are going to look forward to seeing progressives at the top of the ticket.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And of course, our mission does not stop at 2021. It continues on. So we're hoping that, we build up all of this momentum this year, and we take it right into the midterms next year. And then of course, to the Senate, where we need so much reform already in the Senate of Virginia, that we will be using that to go from there. So thank you all for joining us. And I will play us out here, as it were, and we look forward to seeing you all on the campaign trail.